Sup folks, welcome to the part 2, of What If Deku Get Reborn as a Vampire. Chapter 7. Midoriya got home safely from Grin's office at around 4 in the morning, but he didn't feel tired. He got through his morning routine, which now included an hour-long workout session. Midoriya found himself needing less and less sleep with his transformation. He assumed that the extra time would eventually come in handy. After getting ready for school, he turned on the news around the time his mom came in at the same time the sun rose. "Oh. Hi Izuku. I hope you have been having a good morning," says Inko. "My morning's been going pretty good. How is yours?" asks Izuku. "It's going great. I slept well. I can't help but notice that you're up so early. Did you have trouble sleeping?" asks Inko. "No. I just happened to wake up not too long ago," lies Izuku. The newscaster that has faded into the background until now says something about a vigilante and catches the attention of both of the Midoriyas. His vigilante struck again last night downtown. He managed to subdue 5 villains and called the police to pick them up. Unfortunately, we weren't able to catch any of this on camera. Professionals recommend that the vigilante stops and lets the pros do their work before someone gets hurt, says the reporter. The mugshots of the villains he helped arrest show up on screen. He notices a dark spot on the crocodile villain's scales that he assumes is a bruise. He's already prepared to go to school, so he can just sit back and watch the news. He finds that people collectively agree based on statements from the villains that he has a strength-enhancing quirk, is a male, is around 5 feet and 9 inches tall as he has been growing recently. He even went out and bought bigger clothes with his mother. After realizing that the only thing people knew about him was his body type and that they thought his eyes were slitted like a predator's, he thought he wouldn't be found out anytime soon. He decided to go to school today and get the work he's missing. He had a lot to do, but he knew how to do it. He finished his work and a couple of tests. When school ended, he asked Grin if he could come over. When he got the all clear, he asked his mom if he could go to a friend's house. When she said yes, he started the long walk down to Grin's office to talk about how he could convince his mom to let him move into the apartment across the street from the office. When he got into Grin's office, he noticed Grin giving him a weird, almost distrusting look. "Is something wrong?" asks Midoriya. "How did you get your quirk?" asks Grin. "What?" asks Midoriya. "I said, how did you get your quirk?" says Grin. "It's a little hard to explain," says Midoriya. "Do you know who All for One is?" asks Grin. "No, I don't." "Who is it?" asks Midoriya. "That is not important," says Grin. "Wait, how did you know I was quirkless?" asks Midoriya. "I asked around about you. I gotta say, I didn't expect you to blackmail an entire school," says Grin. "Don't dig up information on me," says Midoriya angrily. "Hey, don't be so mad. I'm an information broker, it's what I do. Also, I was curious. I wanted to see what kind of person you are," says Grin. "Don't look into my past," says Midoriya with a fire in his voice. "I'll promise to never tell anybody a thing about you that would be compromising if you tell me how you got your powers," says Grin. "You promise?" asks Midoriya. "I won't say a word," says Grin. While Grin said that Midoriya had his enhanced senses activated, looking for a heightened heartbeat or any other signs that point to Grin lying, and found nothing that points to him lying. "I got my quirk from the time I died," says Midoriya. "What?" asks Grin incredulously. "Well, it's not actually a quirk to begin with," says Midoriya under his breath but loud enough for Grin to hear. "Have you ever heard of a vampire? Like the bat?" asks Grin. "No. It's similar but different. Basically, humans aren't the only intelligent life form on the planet. Vampires coexist with humans and look just like them. To become a vampire, you have to be drained of all of the blood in your body and drink a vampire's blood," says Midoriya. "Kid, I know you aren't lying to me, but I find this hard to believe," says Grin. "So did I," But I died and woke up later like nothing happened, so it was not too hard for me to believe, says Midoriya. So if I understand this correctly, you've died before, says Grin. Yeah, I have. Nothing has really been the same since then. Living has felt like dreaming and I can't seem to wake up. Maybe even a nightmare. I only seem to feel happy when I'm fighting, says Midoriya. That must have been awful, says Grin. Yeah, it is, but I've been through much worse. I can take it, says Midoriya. That's really concerning, and I normally don't care about people at all, says Grin. Well, then let's take your mind off of how depressing I am and direct it towards our work. I still need my costume and maybe some support gear, says Midoriya. That is true, says Grin. I've actually been thinking about what tools you might want to bring into a fight with you, says Grin. And what types of weapons do you think I might need? Asks Midoriya. Well, I don't exactly think you need either, but both of them will help out a lot, says Grin. I'm gonna get two? Asks Midoriya. Yeah, you are, says Grin. What exactly am I getting? Asks Midoriya. You're getting a knife to help with close range and to throw if you need to, replies Grin. That sounds good. What else am I getting? Asks Midoriya. Well, I noticed you didn't have any way to fight effectively at a distance, so I thought I would get you a pistol, says Grin. Aren't those illegal here? Asks Midoriya. So is being a vigilante, replies Grin. That's a fair point, I guess, says Midoriya. Okay, so do we agree on the tools? Asks Grin. Yeah, but what are gonna do for the costume? Asks Midoriya. I was thinking a dark blue suit, with a yellow undershirt, a black tie, and a black bandana that's the same shade as the tie, says Grin. First, I don't know how to tie a tie. My dad wasn't around to teach me. Second, that sounds like it would be hard to move around in. Third, that was oddly specific. Was it based off of something? Says Midoriya. First, I can teach you how to tie a tie. Second, I'll make sure that the fabric is fitting enough to look like a suit should while still letting you move freely and fight in it. Third, it may have been based on something, replies Grin. Okay, well, it sounds fine as long as the suit has pockets for ammo. Now there is just one last thing I want to go over, says Midoriya. And what would that be? Asks Grin. How am I gonna convince my mom to let me move across the street from you? Asks Midoriya. Well, I guess we could try to convince her that I'm giving you a job, says Grin. Yeah, but what kind of job would you give me? It's not like you run a legit business. And I don't think we can fake my mom out on this. Also, I'm not sure I can trust you to meet my mother, says Midoriya. You don't trust me? I'm trying to get you a gun, how can you not trust that? Asks Grin. The only reason you're doing that is because you want me to use it to get your work done, says Midoriya. That's a fair point, but I promise I won't hurt your mother in any way. I'll even protect her if I can, says Grin. Once again, Midoriya was unable to pick up on any kind of line even with his enhanced senses. Alright, fine, I'll let mom show up here, says Midoriya. Wait, what if she finds out about you being a vigilante? Asks Grin. She doesn't know that I have any powers. The whole becoming a vampire thing was pretty recent, says Midoriya. Alright, well, do you remember the garage at the back of the building with all of the cars? Asks Grin. Yeah, says Midoriya while being a little confused on where Grin was going with this. I sell used cars and I can try to convince your mother that I want a younger salesman who can appeal to younger crowds, says Grin. Alright, I guess that could work, says Midoriya. So are we going through with the plan? Asks Grin. Yeah, I guess it's the best course of action available to us right now, replies Midoriya. It was at this point Midoriya's phone started to ring. Midoriya apologized and looked down at his phone and found that it was his mother that was calling him. Hey mom, says Izuku. Hey Izuku. I was wondering what time you were gonna be home, says Inko. Grin whispers, ask if you can stay longer. Midoriya responds to Grin with a nod and says, Do you mind if I stay out a while longer? Well, okay, but be home by 10. Says Inko. I will. Says Izuku. Okay then. Bye sweetie. Says Inko. Bye mom. I love you, says Izuku. I love you too. Says Inko before hanging up. Okay, what did you want me to stay for? Asks Midoriya. I have another gang I want you to fight. Says Grin. Oh cool. Says Midoriya excitedly. Where are they? They're close. They hide out in an abandoned apartment complex. I'm gonna give you the address and you can jump on over. Says Grin as he hands Midoriya a piece of paper, with an address on it. Okay, I'll go get them. Says Midoriya. Wait kid before you go. Says Grin. Yeah, what's up? Asks Midoriya. Change into this for the job. Says Grin as he holds out a dark outfit. Midoriya takes the outfit, walks into the garage and changes his clothes. He is now wearing black sweatpants, a black hoodie with red strings and a black bandana. Midoriya walks into the main room and is about to head out. By the way, I'll probably have the planned uniform by the next time we do this. Says Grin. Sounds good. Says Midoriya as he walks out the door. Midoriya jumps onto some nearby roof and takes off across the city, jumping from building to building until he reaches the address. When he gets there he sees villains that he recognizes as a group that recently pulled a heist and got away with several registers worth of money. When he looks through the window they are in, he checked all of the other windows and they were empty. He decided to go for a risky approach and knock on the front door like he wasn't going to beat everybody inside. Hello, I heard there were villains living here. I wanted to know if you needed a recruit with super strength. Says Midoriya. He hears shuffling and talking about whether or not they should let him in. Finally one of them opens the door before saying, "Get in." Midoriya walks through and sees two villains sitting on a couch looking at him while the one that let him in is taking his seat. We've decided to do an interview and analysis of abilities. Says the one in the middle. That's fair. Says Midoriya. What can you do? Asks the one on the left, who happens to have scales over his knuckles. This. Says Midoriya before knocking all three of them out with one very wide right hook. He grabs some rope from the corner of the room and ties the trio together. He takes the bundle of villains to the nearest police station and throws them outside with a little more force than necessary. He runs back to Grin's, changes and uses his powers to run and jump his way back home before 10 o'clock. Hey mom. Says Izuku as he unlocks the door to his house and enters. Hi Izuku. Responds Inko. I might have an opportunity to get some work experience and also a job. Says Izuku. Oh, that's great. Is it through the school? Asks Inko. No. I just know somebody that wants to hire me. Says Izuku. Oh, that's great. What kind of job is it? Asks Inko. He wants me to sell cars. Says Izuku. Are you sure? It's not that I think you can't do it. It's just that you have no experience in sales. Says Inko. We both know that, but he wants someone that can appeal to young people who have just got their license. Says Izuku. That makes sense. But, I'm curious, where is this job? Asks Inko. It's on 34th Street. Says Izuku. Oh. It's in that side of town. It's kind of far. And I don't think that's a good neighborhood. Says Inko. I get the feeling you think I shouldn't take this job. Says Izuku. Well, at least let me meet the man trying to hire you. Says Inko. Alright, I'll ask about that. Says Izuku. Before everybody went to sleep they agreed to go to Grin's office after school and after work. One of the main points Midoriya had for the apartment was that the school year is ending soon and he wouldn't have to go to school, making the only real important thing a summer job. Summer breaks have actually become longer due to Hero High School needing more prep time, which means Midoriya gets to freely work as a vigilante for a while longer than he would have otherwise. The next day Izuku and Inko walked from their house to the train station. They took the train to the downtown and started walking to Grin's. When they finally got there, Inko was looking around nervously and Grin was sitting at his desk awkwardly. "So Mom, this is Grin." "Grin, this is Mom," says Izuku. "Hello Mr.S Midoriya," says Grin. "Hell Mr. Grin. I'd like to be very straightforward about this. Why do you want to hire my son?" asks Inko. "Growing up I noticed how hard it was for quirkless people to get jobs. Even if they were more qualified they still wouldn't get it. I say that people wouldn't hire me and decided to make my own business. I promised myself if I ever found another quirkless person I would give him or her the help I needed. I think us quirkless people should stick together," says Grin. Chapter 8. Growing up I noticed how hard it was for quirkless people to get jobs. Even if they were more qualified they still wouldn't get it. I say that people wouldn't hire me and decided to make my own business. I promised myself if I ever found another quirkless person I would give him or her the help I needed," says Grin. Inko's face goes through a series of emotions including but not limited to confusion, anger, pity, and sorrow. "Why you starts Inko before getting cut off. Like me," says Izuku, who didn't know Grin's plan beforehand but moved along with it seamlessly. "Is it really that hard? I want what's best for my boy. If it's really that hard it's possible we might not have any other choice," says Inko. "It's truly terrible. I honestly think it's been getting worse as the quirkless population lessens. I don't think that any quirkless kids these days are going to have any chance of getting a job unless they work together like me and your son," says Grin. "Well, I'm very glad to see you looking after people like Izuku. I think it's super great that people can have each other's backs through similarly difficult situations like yours," says Inko. "Yeah, Grin has been great to me," adds Izuku. "That's good to hear," says Inko. "I have to ask one last time. Do you think there is any chance of my boy finding a job?" "I'll answer your question with one of my own," says Grin. "Have you ever compared statistics between the quirkless and the quirked population?" "Do you mean like employment rates?" asks Inko. "That and other things," replies Grin. "The population of quirkless people hired even on a scale that fits the population gap shows quirkless people being several times lower with a number that is still plummeting even further down. It's not just that either. This is a topic that might not be easy to talk about, but have you ever looked into the suicide rates of people without quirks?" "I have not." Are they high?" asks Inko, hoping he says no but expecting him to say yes. "They're so high. It's not fair. The way people get treated because of a quirk. I think one of the contributing factors to that number is the stress of never being able to get a job," says Grin. "I see," says Inko. "Izuku, have you ever felt like suicide might be a solution to your problems?" "No, I've always continued with my dream of being a pro hero. It's always been there to keep me tethered," replies Izuku. Izuku bin means past tense. Are you done with your dream?" asks Inko. "Yeah. But I'm not going anywhere anytime soon. I don't know if I have any plans for the future or what it holds for me, but I'm not going to throw my life away. And besides, even if I don't become a pro hero there are plenty of ways I can keep helping people. Even if I'm not a government registered hero, I can still be my own kind of hero. I don't think the quirk, costume, or popularity makes a hero. I think it's a drive to do something good and help others," says Izuku. Grin smiles while looking at Izuku, although none of the Midoriyas notice. This kid really will change the world for the better, as long as he holds on to that passion and those ideals. People might flock around him and he might make a mistake here or there, but he's gonna be the best non-official hero in Japan. Know the world. This kid's going places and my sorry ass might just be able to help him get there," thinks Grin. "That sounds wonderful. I admittedly don't think heroes are special based on what they have the power to do, but instead it's how they use that power," says Inko. "You two are really alike. You raised a fine young man," says Grin, "but about the job I'd like an answer soon. You don't have to say anything today, but please try to get back to me soon." "All right, He can do it, says Inko. Oh really? Asks Grin, who happens to be a little surprised that she agreed so fast. Yeah, I just think I can trust you. I saw Izuku smile at you when we came in. It was a genuine smile that let me know he trusts you, and if he trusts you I guess I can trust you too. Although I do have one concern, says Inko, gaining the renewed attention of Izuku and Grin. And what might that be? Asks Grin. It's really far away. I don't know how he will be able to get here for work, says Inko. Well, I know the real estate around here are cheap, says Grin before pointing to the house across the street. That place could be paid for with just plain salary with some room for groceries and other things. It looks nice from the outside, says Izuku. Did you both plan this? Asks Inko. No, of course not, says Izuku. Izuku, sweetie, you're a horrible liar, says Inko. Izuku seems to freeze while he tries to think of something to say. Would you promise to visit every day? Well, not every day but every other day? Asks Inko. Yeah, I think I'll visit every day. I'm gonna be hard to get rid of, says Izuku. Inko smiles and chuckles a little bit. Okay, fine, you can move and just keep in touch with me. You didn't even need to ask, replies Midoriya. Okay, who would I need to talk to rent that house for, Izuku? Asks Inko. Give me a moment, says Grin before pulling out some papers and handing them to Inko. You're a sleazy person. You know that? Says Inko with only a tad of contempt in her voice. Yeah, I am, but look at the price, says Grin. I doubt it'll make much difference, says Inko before looking at the papers. Are you joking? I can't take this deal. I'll feel like I'm stealing from you. I insist also it's that per month to buy, not to rent, says Grin. That doesn't make it any better. Wait, I haven't even seen what the house looks like on the inside or the backyard, says Inko. Let's fix that, says Grin as he takes a pair of keys out from under his desk. A half hour later. That house was wonderful. I can't take that from you, says Inko. I won it through gambling. It cost me nothing and makes me money. You're not stealing from me in the slightest, says Grin. Well, if you're sure. Also, who gambles using an entire house? Asks Inko. A man with several houses, says Grin. Oh, the person was just so rich they had nothing of importance to them to lose on that bet, says Inko. Exactly, says Grin. Well, I guess Izuku stay at the house, says Inko. Thank you so much, Mom, says Izuku. You're gonna pay with money from your job, says Inko. That is completely understandable, replies Izuku. Alright, now all that we have to do now is fill out some paperwork and Izuku will have a job and a place to stay, says Grin. Honestly, I'm doing pretty good for myself, says Izuku. Do you know why that is? Asks Grin. It's because I've got the best boss in the world, says Izuku. It's because you've got the best boss in the world, replies Grin. After some paperwork and some proud parental tears from Inko, Izuku was ready to move in and had a fake job that he would sometimes do to keep up appearances. Izuku, I'm going to head home. Do you want to stay here for a little while? Asks Inko. Yeah, sure, answers Izuku. Okay, bye sweetie, be home soon, says Inko before stepping out and starting to walk home. Okay Mom, we'll talk again soon, says Izuku. So kid, you want a smoke? Asks Grin before holding out a cigarette and a lighter. Sure, Midoriya while lighting his cigarette. Do you want a celebratory drink? Asks Grin before pulling out a bottle of whiskey and 2 glasses. Sure. Just give me a minute, says Midoriya before texting Ruby. Izuku, would my liver regenerate? Ruby, yes, and also oh my god, what happened? Izuku, nothing. I was just wondering if I could drink alcohol without any negative consequences. Ruby, yeah, you'll be fine, although alcohol will still get you drunk, but you should have a high tolerance. Izuku, okay thanks. Ruby, you're welcome, thanks for the drink. says Midoriya before downing the entire glass of whiskey like it was nothing. Kid, you aren't supposed to down the entire glass. Are you okay? Asks Grin, who seems a little surprised and also concerned. Yeah, I'm fine. Why wouldn't I be? Asks Midoriya. No reason. I guess. Says Grin eloquently. Is it okay if I have more? Asks Midoriya while taking a drag from his cigarette. Sure, knock yourself out, but you might want to mask the whole cigarette and alcohol smell you have going before you go home. Says Grin. Oh shit. Mom wanted me home soon. Says Midoriya before downing another glass that takes no effect on him and running out the door. Midoriya used his enhanced speed and jumping abilities to travel across town and ran by the beach to let the ocean breeze get rid of his addict scent before heading into the apartment he shares with his mom. Hey mom. Says Izuku. Hey sweetie. Says Inko. Thanks again for being so understanding about everything today. Says Izuku. Speaking of everything today, you should start packing your bags. Do you have any ideas on how to move everything? Asks Inko. I know a girl. And a guy. Says Izuku. The next day, and that's why I'd like your help moving. Says Izuku. Yeah, okay. Says Hatsune. Cool, thanks. Says Izuku. Are we picking up anyone else? Asks Hatsune. Yeah, we have just one more stop. Says Izuku. Alright then. Replies Hatsune. 10 minutes later. Hey Aunt Mitsuki. Says Izuku. Hey Izuku, are you looking for my brat? Asks Mitsuki. Yeah, I want him to help me move into a house near my new job. Says Izuku. Oh, that's nice, just a moment. Says Mitsuki before turning to the stairs. Hey dumb fuck, get down here. He'll be down in just a moment. So, what kind of job do you have? I'm gonna sell some cars. Says Izuku. Wow, you're doing really good for yourself. Says Mitsuki. I like to think so. Says Izuku. What do you want, you old hag? Asks Bikugu. Hey Kaken. Says Izuku. What are you doing here? Asks Bikugu. I know you work out and I want help moving boxes into my new house. Says Izuku. Why the fuck would I help you? Asks Bikugu. Bikugu's question is answered by a slap from his mother. Help him. Says Mitsuki. God damn it, fine. Says Bikugu before following Midoriya out to Hatsume's truck. You wanna drive Berkeley, man? Asks Hatsune. Sure. Says Midoriya before driving to his apartment. All of the boxes are swiftly put into the back of Hatsume's truck and driven down to Midoriya's new place to get dropped off. Hey, Grin, I'm gonna head back to the lab and keep building. Says Hatsume once they're done. That's fine. I'll see you around. Says Midoriya. Hatsume leaves and now it's just Bikugu and Midoriya alone in the apartment. Alright, now that Scope Eyes is gone we can talk. Says Bikugu. Yeah, I wanted to go over a couple things. Replies Midoriya. First, why did you bring me here? Asks Bikugu. I knew you'd say no at first and get hit by your mom, and I wanted to see that. Also, you're strong. Lastly, I wanted to talk about a couple things. Says Midoriya. And what might those be? Asks Bikugu. Do you think I hate you? Asks Midoriya. Yeah. I do. Says Bikugu. Well, I want you to know that while I'm mad at you for all of your usual bullshit, I don't hate you. Says Midoriya. Well, the feeling isn't mutual. Says Bikugu. Okay, well, second, I want you to know I don't plan on blackmailing you unless you act up. Says Midoriya. Fucking better not use that shit. Says Bikugu. And third, I want you to become a hero because you have the talent to do things that are genuinely good for the world. So I want you to go to U.A. I want you to rock that exam and become the greatest hero you can be, but before all of that, I want you to get your shit together. So fix yourself up before your arrogance puts you somewhere it can't get you out of. Also, get out of my house now, the train station is just down the street. Says Midoriya. Whatever, you shitty fucking nerd, and I don't need to get my shit together. And even if my shit was not together I would still graduate U.A and become the greatest hero ever. Says Bikige before leaving for the train station, leaving Midoriya with only one thought. God fucking damn it, I've got a lot of unpacking to do. Chapter 9. After Midoriya, Hatsune, and Bikige moved all of Midoriya's boxes to his new house, he began to unpack his essentials before going to sleep to make sure he got a good night's worth of rest before unpacking everything else. He woke up and decided he would make a new morning exercise routine. He went out wearing tights, shorts, and a tight-fitting started with a long run using his enhanced speed so that it didn't look like a quirk but just looked like he is an exceptionally fast runner. He finds himself enjoying walking or running. He loved the mindless movement that cleared his mind. He ran past the beach he cleaned, Hatsune's workshop, his old apartment, and finally back to his new home. He went around unpacking his belongings, most of which were things he didn't need but his mom insisted he have on hand. When he finished unpacking he watched the news and looked at some heroes and some villains that have been active recently. He made sure to memorize the faces of the villains in case he ran into any of them. He was shaken from his memorization by a growling stomach. He knew he should eat something soon. He thinks he can manage some time without drinking blood. Even with all of the villains he already fought he would not take their blood unless he felt his hunger tighten his stomach. He decided to watch the news for a while longer before asking Grin if there was anybody he could go after. To his surprise, a knock on his door stopped his plans short. He looked through the door hole to see Grin standing outside with a bag while taking a drag from his cigarette. Midoriya quickly opened the door to greet Grin and see what he wanted. "Hey Grin. What's up?" asks Midoriya. "Not too much, but there is one thing of note and that just happens to be in this bag," says Grin as he holds out a bag to Izuku. Izuku opens the bag to see 2 full bottles of the whiskey he drank with Grin the other day and 5 packs of cigarettes. "With a job as stressful as yours, I'm sure you will need those," states Grin. "I'm sure I will," says Midoriya. "You seemed to like the whiskey a lot, so I thought I'd get you some more of it. Also, if you are looking for more beer, cigarettes or any kind of drug, call this number," says Grin as he holds out a slip of paper that Midoriya takes and thanks Grin for giving him. "It's no problem, kid. So watchin'? I'm just watching the news to see if anything is useful," says Midoriya while gesturing to his couch before Grin takes a seat with Midoriya. "The information gathering is my job. If you do your own work, what do you need me for?" asks Grin jokingly. "Well, without you how am I gonna get my cigarettes and whiskey?" asks Midoriya. "You little shit. I do more than bring cigarettes and whiskey. I plan on bringing some pizza eventually," says Grin with a smirk. "I can't taste food and I don't get any nutrition from it," says Midoriya. "Wait. Then what did I give you whiskey for?" asks Grin. "I can still get drunk. My vision was going blurry the last time we drank and I felt real relaxed," says Midoriya. "It's good to see you're not an angry drunk, or else I'd fear for my life giving you that whiskey," says Grin. "Yeah, super strength and anger issues are one hell of a combination," says Midoriya. "So do you have any plans for today?" asks Grin. "Yeah, I was hoping I could go on a job for you. If you remember me drinking blood, I need to do that every once in a while or else I attack indiscriminately at anything I can take blood from and I'd rather that not happen. So if you could send me on a job to get more blood then that would be great," says Midoriya. "I thought you would never ask," says Grin. "Come back to my office, I have all of the information you would need in there." "Great, let's head over and come up with a plan before I get to work," says Midoriya. After a quick walk across the street, the two are in Grin's office looking at files that describe a person's personality, quirk, and fighting style along with a picture of the target. "So do you have any idea for the stretchy arms?" asks Grin. "If I can bite his arms and drain his blood, his increased mass and sudden blood loss will heighten the effect of blood loss and should cause him to pass out quickly and shrink back so I don't do any real damage," says Midoriya. "Okay, that's good, but what do we do about the guy with the long metal tongue?" asks Grin. Are there any other parts of him that are made of metal? Asks Midoriya. Yeah, there is his jaw. Why do you ask? Asks Grin. Well, I can hope they are magnetic and place a magnet on his tongue so that it gets stuck inside of his mouth and then I beat him senseless. Says Midoriya. Okay, but what if it isn't magnetic? Asks Grin. Then I grab his tongue and pull him close enough for me to knock him out. Replies Midoriya. That sounds great, but what are you going to do about the guy that can cover himself with crystals? I can't imagine he has an obvious counter. Says Grin. He doesn't. The only thing I can think of is just keep hitting him until he can't hold the crystals there anymore, or I just hit hard enough to break the crystal and get into the flesh underneath. Says Midoriya. Well, alright, but do you think that you can beat them without getting hurt? Asks Grin. If I drink their blood when I'm done I can heal myself and leave only a scar. Says Midoriya. Your regeneration leaves the scars on your body? Asks Grin. Yeah, but as long as the wound's closed it's okay with me. Replies Midoriya. Well, alright I guess. Says Grin. I'm gonna go take care of these villains. Says Midoriya. Good luck. Calls Grin. I don't need luck. Says Midoriya. There is one thing you might need that isn't luck. Says Grin. And what might that be? Asks Midoriya. A gun I have that's meant for you. Says Grin. Oh well, I'll gladly take that. Says Midoriya. Do you know how to shoot one of those things, kid? Asks Grin. I looked into it when we discussed me getting a gun to make up for my lack of range. Says Midoriya. And how did that go? Asks Grin. I'll be shooting like a soldier in no time. Says Midoriya. Alright, but if I'm disappointed I'm taking this back. Says Grin as he hands Midoriya a pistol, magazine, and a small cartridge of bullets. I won't disappoint you. Says Midoriya. Try not to use it if you can get by without it, bullets are expensive. Says Grin. I'll probably just use my hands for this one, I don't think I need anything else. Says Midoriya. Well, you may not need it, but I have a dagger for you. Says Grin as he holds out a small plain blade with a sturdy metal handle. Well, thank you. I've been looking into accurately throwing these. Says Midoriya. Don't practice anywhere near me and good luck out there. Says Grin. I won't, and thank you. Says Midoriya before running down to his house to put on his uniform. Once he had his uniform on he jumped onto the roof and kept jumping from roof to roof until he was traveling well above the ground with. He could see everybody although they seemed to be oblivious to the vigilante overhead. He keeps jumping until he reaches the forest Grin says they are hiding in. He activates his senses of hearing and smell and lets them guide him through the woods and to a point where he could see a small seemingly abandoned house in a clearing. Another deep sniff revealed that his targets are inside. These men had managed to get away from their gang before the pro heroes got everybody. These three were the only ones to escape. He quietly made his way to the house, making sure he paid attention to where he stepped when suddenly two long and stretchy arms shot out of a window and pulled him in its direction. Midoriya promptly sunk his teeth into his opponent's left arm and drained him of his blood. He felt himself grow stronger and his muscles grew slightly under his suit. He heard a loud thud signifying that his plan worked. Shit! Yells someone from inside the house. Midoriya is about to jump through the window when he feels a hard metal whip-like object crack against his back, causing him to turn his head and see the villain with a long and metallic tongue. He keeps his plan in mind, and when the tongue comes again he grabs it and pulls it before spin-kicking the villain in the face and knocking her unconscious. Suddenly he gets hit yet again from behind, but this time it sends him flying into and through a tree. Shit! Groans Midoriya as he gets onto his feet to see the villain covered head to toe with cyan crystals. The villain tried to rush Midoriya with a right hook, but Midoriya sidestepped and punched her in the ribs. The villain whipped around trying to hit Midoriya, but he ducked under it and sent two hard hits to her ribs. The villain tried to bring her hands down on Midoriya's head, but he dodged, although not entirely, and he scratched his shoulder and had a hole put in his suit and undershirt. While he was reeling from this, she hit him in the face, sending him stumbling back. When she tried to hit again with a right hook, he grabbed her arm and flipped her over. Before she could get up, he was on her, hitting her repeatedly, trying to tire out her crystallization until he felt her soften and then hit her in the head hard, knocking her out. He tied up the 3 villains and left them in an abandoned building before making an anonymous call to the police to have them picked up, but not before drinking his fill of blood out of the 3 of them without endangering their lives. Later that night, after reporting to Grin, he texted Ruby about how things have been going, and she decided to visit and see for herself, so he was waiting on the couch with his dress pants and dress shirt but no suit, waiting for her to arrive. He was fiddling with his tie that Grin had managed to teach him how to tie when no one else could when he heard a knock on the door. He answered the door and found Ruby standing there. "Hey Ruby, how are you?" asks Midoriya. "I'm doing good, how are you?" asks Ruby. "I'm doing great, would you like to come in?" asks Izuku. "I sure would," says Ruby as she walks into Midoriya's house. "It's a nice place you got here," says Ruby. "Thank you. Would you like a cigarette?" asks Izuku. "Yeah, sure," says Ruby as she takes and lights her cigarette while Midoriya lights his. "So how has work at the hospital been?" asks Midoriya. "It's the same as usual." "How has being a vigilante been?" asks Ruby. "Oh, it's been so much fun. I would enjoy fighting so much. It's like whenever I fight someone who can hurt me, I feel like I'm on top of the world. It's like a rush that cigarettes or alcohol just can't give me. I feel alive where I usually feel dead," says Midoriya. Ruby smiles at him and rubs his hair. "I'm happy you're enjoying yourself, but try not to push yourself too hard," says Ruby. "I'll try not to," says Midoriya. "So who is the strongest person you've fought so far?" asks Ruby. "Oh, it's really hard to decide between 2 villains. One of them had a crocodile quirk that made him hard, strong, fast, and gave him claws, and another could cover her body in cyan crystals that hurt when I hit them, and I got cut when it hit me," says Izuku. "Okay, but which one was stronger?" asks Ruby with some interest. "I'm gonna have to go for the one with the crystallization quirk," says Midoriya. "And why is that?" asks Ruby. "She managed to bang me up even after a quirk was used to make me a better fighter," says Midoriya. "How bad were you banged up?" asks Ruby. "I had a cut on my shoulder and a bruise on my face," says Midoriya. "Well, as long as it's nothing serious, it's alright," says Ruby. "So have you been drinking blood?" asks Ruby. "I had some to drink today when I fought the crystal villain," says Midoriya. "Have you been drinking with every criminal you capture?" asks Ruby. "Well, no. I've been drinking when I'm thirsty," replies Midoriya. "You need to drink blood with every criminal you capture. You never know when you are going to lose your supply of villains and do something you might regret," says Ruby. Before Midoriya can respond, Ruby's phone vibrates and she checks it. "Sorry I couldn't stay longer, but I have to get to work," says Ruby. "It's alright, I'll talk to you another time," says Midoriya. With that short conversation, Ruby was leaving Midoriya alone to think about what she told him at the end of their conversation. You never know when you are going to lose your supply of villains and do something you might regret flashed through Izuku's head, and the thought of harming his mother or Ruby, or even Grin, pop into his head and he shudders. She is right. If I don't start taking blood from villains as often as I can, there is a chance I hurt my family or Chapter 10. Midoriya though on what Ruby had to say. He knew that he needed to drink blood. If he didn't, he would end up hurting someone innocent, or even worse, somebody that he cared for. He knew all of this, so why does it seem so difficult to commit to the obvious answer? He knows why, but he isn't sure if he wants to admit it to himself. He still feels human, like he isn't used to the taste of blood, but somehow finds himself addicted to it. He hates it, but whenever he drinks it, it fills him with a sense of bliss like nothing else can. He decides to put his costume back on and patrol just in case somebody out there needed his help. He took off with a powerful leap and worked his way across the city, looking and listening for anybody that might need him. He went around and around until he finally decided to go back home. On his way back home he saw a group of men in all black with crowbars sneaking up to a convenience store. Midoriya jumps off his roof and lands in front of them. "You guys really aren't the brightest. Are you?" asks Midoriya. "Who's there? Are you a hero?" asks the villain Midoriya assumes is the leader. "Yeah, something like that." "Who are you?" asks Midoriya while trying to sound disinterested. "I don't think I should answer that," replies the villain. "MHHM, and what exactly are you doing so late at night?" asks Midoriya. "Mind your own business," says the villain. "I gotta say, out of all of the villains I've met, something about you stands out. It might be that I think you are a buffoon," says Midoriya. "That's a possibility," replies the villain. "Oh look, hero," says Midoriya while pointing to a nearby rooftop. "Where?" calls out the villain while looking behind himself. By the time the villain looks back, his crew are all on the ground in various positions, all of which a human body can't comfortably be put in. "Are they okay? What happened?" asks the villain. Apostrophe. Just how stupid is this guy? Is this what heroes deal with? They get paid for this, I'd do this for entertainment even if I didn't like fighting. This guy's hilariously stupid. Thinks Midoriya. "I don't know, they just sort of collapsed. You should check this one out," says Midoriya while holding up the limp unconscious body of a villain. "That's not a bad idea," says the villain as he steps towards Midoriya. As soon as he gets closer, Midoriya throws the villains together and sends them skidding along the sidewalk that is only illuminated by a single streetlight. "Anyways, I was wondering when you were gonna come down from that roof," says Midoriya slightly loudly. A small thud sound comes from behind Midoriya. "When did you hear me?" asks the voice. "When you got here," says Midoriya as he turns around to see a man wearing mostly black with an excessively long gray scarf and golden goggles over his eyes. "I gotta say, I feel like I know you from somewhere," says Midoriya. "I think I've got an idea who you are too," says the mystery man. "I think you are the Eraser hero Eraserhead," says Midoriya. "I am, and I think you are that vigilante I've been hearing so much about," says Eraserhead. "And if I am?" asks Midoriya. "Then I have to apprehend you, although I understand why you do what you do," says Eraserhead. "Well, due to the fact you are one of the only heroes I truly respect, I'd like to warn you that I fight like I'm not human," says Midoriya. "You're too cocky," says Eraserhead. "I never said I was going to win," says Midoriya. "Well, I stand corrected," says Eraserhead, "but you are still coming with me." Eraserhead's scarf shoots out and wraps around Midoriya, and Eraserhead's hair begins to float and his eyes begin to glow red. "Are you trying to fight me with a paper towel roll?" asks Midoriya. "Be quiet, you're under arrest," says Eraserhead. "No thanks," replies Midoriya before ripping through Eraserhead's capture weapon like it was made of paper. Midoriya's strength, despite Eraserhead being sure that he erased his quirk, startled Eraserhead. Eraserhead started in confusion for a moment before throwing a fast and powerful right hook that Midoriya stepped back and ducked to dodge. Eraserhead seemed surprised that this vigilante seems to be dealing with him with either no difficulty or he just looks like he fights effortlessly. "I really don't want to fight you. I just want to go home now," says Midoriya while yawning, "but before I leave there is something I have to do." Midoriya sinks his teeth into the closest unconscious villain and drinks his blood. "What are you doing?" asks Eraserhead. "I'm drinking blood. I have to do this or else I can't control my body and I have to lash out at anything trying to get blood. If there are children nearby I'll be stuck with the knowledge that I attacked them and I couldn't help myself, which is why I take blood from these villains," says Midoriya while trying to drink blood from the villains he knocked out and talk at the same time. "Maybe I could find a way to help you with that," offers Eraserhead. Midoriya glances to Eraserhead and smiles under his bandana. "That's what I like about you. Helping me with my mental issues doesn't get you any money or any fame, but you do it anyways just to help. You're what I think a hero should be," says Midoriya. Does that mean you will let me help you? Asks Eraserhead. I'm sorry. I know you want to help, but for me to get help I would need to tell my mother that something is wrong, says Midoriya. Eraserhead looks thoughtful for a while before saying, Your mother? Does that mean you're a child? Yeah, says Midoriya. Kid, you can't go around fighting villains. You could get yourself killed, says Eraserhead. Midoriya responds with a cold chuckle before saying, I've already come back from the dead once before. Doing it a second time doesn't scare me, says Midoriya. Eraserhead looks at Midoriya thoughtfully for a moment before pulling paper and a pencil out of his utility belt and hands it to Midoriya. If you ever find yourself in over your head, call this number. Does this mean I get to walk away from this? Asks Midoriya. It's just in case you get away, replies Eraserhead. Ah, I see. That's real smart of you. But when I get away I want you to know that I probably won't call this number, replies Midoriya. That's fine. I just can't in good conscience let a kid the same age as my students commit acts of vigilantism without any sort of support, says Eraserhead. I'm actually younger than your students, replies Midoriya. Kid, I need to get you some sort of help, says Eraserhead. Look man, I appreciate it but I'm fine, says Midoriya. I'm not a psychologist but I imagine dying isn't good for the soul, nor is going out of your way to fight villains at far too young an age. You mentioned having a mother. If you keep this up you might not be able to go home to her, says Eraserhead. Midoriya stares Eraserhead down before saying, I told you I've come back from the dead. If the situation arises I'll simply just do it again. Do you know if you can come back again or are you just assuming? Asks Eraserhead. He was met with a disappointing silence. Please let me help you with whatever it is you need to work through, says Eraserhead. I can do just fine on my own. I've been doing just fine against the world for years, even if things were stacked against me. I don't usually take so much pride in the things I do, but one thing I do take pride in is that I've taken every hit this cruel life has thrown at me and I got back up. I've even stared death in the face and rose from the grave to keep fighting, but now I fight for others. I only received these powers when I died. I spent my whole life a quirkless, friendless nobody, but now I can use my power to take this world in my hands and make it the best world it can be, and just like the rest of my life I can take it upon myself to do, says Midoriya with such a conviction that it would put most heroes or villains to shame. He doesn't exactly know why he said so much about himself, but something about Eraserhead makes him trust the man. Maybe it's that he looks behind his goggles and sees only a desire to help in his eyes. I understand wishing you could hold up the weight of the world so that others don't have to struggle, but that doesn't work out as well as you'd think it would. People need help to make major accomplishments. I know better than most. You can't take on the world by yourself. You are only human, but it's okay to be only human. That's how the rest of us are, says Eraserhead. The irony of Eraserhead saying that he's only human wasn't lost on Midoriya, but he decided he wouldn't address that right now. I might not be able to take the world on by myself, but I can try. And if you fail, asks Eraserhead. Then I try again, replies Midoriya. And if you can't, asks Eraserhead. Then I go down with the knowledge I gave everything I had in me until I couldn't give any longer, replies Midoriya. You're going to run yourself into the ground one of these days with an attitude like that, says Eraserhead. I'll run myself right back out, replies Midoriya. Conversing with you is like talking to a brick wall, says Eraserhead. I know, and honestly I'm not going to stop being so stubborn anytime soon, says Midoriya. Kid, I'm gonna get you to stop even if I have to do it by force, says Eraserhead. Well, I'm certain you won't do it with words, replies Midoriya. The two stare at each other for a long tense moment before Eraserhead speaks. Kid, don't make me do this. You could just walk away right now, suggests Midoriya. You know I can't do that, says Eraserhead. I know, and while I don't like that, I respect your dedication to your work even when it's unpleasant, says Midoriya. Well, someone has to do it, says Eraserhead. Yeah, I guess they do, says Midoriya before spreading his stance wide and moving his arms into a defensive position. Is there any chance I can get you to go to UA before we fight? Asks Eraserhead. I've been considering it, says Midoriya. Maybe I could be your homeroom teacher, says Eraserhead. That sounds nice. When the time comes I might take you up on that offer, but no, I think I have to get through you then head home, says Midoriya. Eraserhead responds by getting into a fighting stance of his own. Once again there is a tense moment between the two. Suddenly Eraserhead rushes forwards and throws what's left of his scarf in an effort to capture Midoriya. Midoriya gracefully sidesteps the scarf but isn't as lucky when Eraserhead sweeps his feet out from under him. Midoriya pushes himself backwards and upwards into the air. Eraserhead tries to wrap him up again, but Midoriya grabs the scarf and pulls Eraserhead into the air with him. The two struggle, and by the time they land, Midoriya using his superior strength has Eraserhead pinned under him. Please don't follow me. I don't want to have to knock you out, says Midoriya. Eraserhead doesn't say anything, but Midoriya can see a determined look in his eyes behind his goggles. I see, you don't plan on letting me go home, do you? Asks Midoriya. Once again he is met with silence. Then I'm sorry. I'll leave you on a roof so nobody messes with you, says Midoriya before bringing his head down on Eraserhead's. Midoriya jumps up onto the roof and places Eraserhead up there before making his way back home. He doesn't know it yet, but he will be seeing Eraserhead more in the future. Chapter 11. After Izuku's meeting with Eraserhead, he went home and went through his nightly routine, which included jogging around town before heading back home and cleaning up before going to sleep. He found that any form of rest wouldn't come to him easily, so he stepped out onto his balcony from the second floor of his house that is accessible through his bedroom. He sat on his rocking chair and smoked cigarette after cigarette while thinking about his meeting with Eraserhead. He always respected him as a hero, but now he respects him even more, not only as a hero but as a person. He wonders if he should have let Eraserhead help him, but his mind freezes up and he can't seem to come up with an answer. He wonders if he should call the number he got from Eraserhead. He wants to. He doesn't know what he would talk about if he called, but he wants to do it anyway. He wonders if Eraserhead was right about him running himself into the ground. He knows that there are some strong villains in the world and that he will get hurt in the future, but somehow that doesn't scare him. He wonders if he should really go to UA despite him being a vigilante. He wants to be there with Eraserhead, but he doesn't know if he will be let in or if they will find out he's the vigilante. Maybe Eraserhead would tell them and he would get arrested. Something tells him Eraserhead wouldn't do that, but he can't be too cautious. He also wonders why Eraserhead held back so much. He thinks of dying. Of his mother finding out he was a vigilante only because she was informed when his corpse was found. He sat and he thought about everything over and over again until his eyes grew heavy and he fell asleep in his chair. With Eraserhead woke up and headed back home, still reeling with disappointment. He jumped and swung back to the house he shares with the pro heroes present, Mick and Midnight. He unlocks the door and steps in quietly so that he doesn't wake up his roommates. Shouta! Calls out, present Mick. Damn it, Mick, do you have to be so loud? Says Aizawa grumpily. I'm with Eraser on this one, says Midnight from the couch in the living room. What are you two doing up so late? Asks Aizawa. We were worried you didn't come home around your usual time. At first we assumed you were beating some villains up, but it took you a while longer than usual and we started panicking, says present Mick. Sorry for worrying you, Aizawa says with a sigh. What happened anyway? Asks Midnight. I met that new vigilante that people have been talking about, says Aizawa. Oh, good job apprehending that guy, says Midnight. He knocked me unconscious and left me on top of a roof of a nearby building, says Aizawa. Are you okay? Asks present Mick. I'm fine, he didn't want to hurt me, says Aizawa. Oh, it's a man. says Midnight while licking her lips. It's a child, says Aizawa. Midnight looks thoughtful for a while before saying, how young? Too young, replies Eraser while he and Present Mick give her a disgusted look. Wait, actually, how young is he? I'm a little concerned, asks Present Mick. I don't know for sure, but he's younger than our students, says Aizawa. Oh, that's not good, says Midnight. I know. I tried to help him, but he's stubborn and he has suppressed emotional baggage that I'm not entirely qualified to deal with, says Aizawa. Well, maybe we can help. Why don't you tell us about it and maybe we can see if Nezu will help us, says Midnight. Well, for starters, his quirk looks like a strength and speed enhancer. He has claws, fangs, pointed ears, and his eyes are slitted like a cat's. His hair is either green or black. It was dark and hard to tell the difference. Also, I can't erase his quirk, says Eraserhead. Wait, you can't erase his quirk? Why not? Asks Midnight. What do you think is the best way to capture him would be? Asks Present Mick. I don't know why I can't erase his quirk. I think the best way to capture him would be to use your quirk, Mick. Then I could wrap him up long enough for Midnight to use her gas and knock him out, says Aizawa. Are we sure that's going to work? Asks Present Mick. His ears were pointed. I think he has an enhanced sense of hearing, which is why you would be good for it. I also think he has enhanced sight and potentially smell, says Aizawa. Is there anything else we should know about facing off with him? Asks Midnight. Yeah, the kid's got some pretty good moves. He can compete well as a martial artist, but I don't think he's as good as me unless he held back too, says Aizawa. Why did you hold back? Asks Midnight. I didn't think he would be as good as he was and I lost because of it, but I'm sure we will get him the help he needs, says Aizawa. You mentioned him having some emotional problems he should work through. Could you tell us about those? Asks Present Mick. Well, for starters, he has to drink human blood regularly or else he loses his mind and bites anybody around him, which makes him think he's a danger to his family, says Aizawa. So he doesn't have his family to use as a support group because he thinks he will hurt them? Asks Present Mick. That's right, says Aizawa. I wish we had some way to talk to him, says Midnight. He can call me, but I don't think he will, says Aizawa. Okay, he's got your number. That's good. But I'm gonna have to ruin the mood and ask if there is any other information we should know, says Midnight. Yeah, there is, replies Aizawa. He said he came back from the dead. Because of that he's not afraid to die, but he also doesn't know if he can come back a second time or not. That must be haunting, says Midnight. We have to help him, says Present Mick. That's honestly not the most concerning part. I wish it was, but it isn't, says Aizawa. What is the worst part? Asks Present Mick quietly enough for both people in the room to wish he had his normal volume. Despite not knowing if he can come back again, he isn't scared to die, says Aizawa. So, what happens now? I mean, what can we do? He might die before we get the chance to help him, says Present Mick. He's not a bad fighter. I don't think he's dying anytime soon. Unless he bites off more than he can chew and takes on a big group like the Sapphire Serpent, says Aizawa. Yeah, as long as doesn't pick too big of a fight he'll be fine, says Present Mick, trying to reassure Aizawa, Midnight, and himself. I know that I probably don't want to hear the answer to this, but is there anything else we should know? Asks Midnight while sighing. I hate to break the bad news to you, but yeah, it gets even worse. Again. I think he used to be quirkless before he died for the first time, says Aizawa. What do you mean? Asks Present Mick. He didn't have his strength or speed. He didn't have any enhanced senses. And I think he didn't have to drink blood to survive. This is all new to him. He must be so lost and confused. I wish he would just call already, says Aizawa. Before anybody could say anything else, they were cut off by Aizawa's phone ringing. With Izuku jerks in his chair and falls to the floor. His nightmare was still fresh in his mind. In his nightmare everything Eraserhead said about him running himself into the ground and dying came true. That part hurt to watch, but nothing hurt him the way his mother's reaction to his death did. It wasn't real. It was only a dream. If it isn't real, then why does it hurt so much? Izuku knows the answer but doesn't want to think about it. He doesn't want to think about it, because it might be more than just a dream before he realizes. He wonders if Eraserhead got home, or if he even woke up. He decided he would call just to make sure he got home safe. The phone rang once, it rang again. "Hello?" comes Eraserhead's gruff voice. "Hi, is this Eraserhead?" asks Izuku. "It is. Is this the vigilante I met earlier?" asks Eraserhead. "It is. I was just wondering if you had woken up and gotten home or back to your patrol or whatever it is you were going to do," says Izuku. "Yeah, I'm back at my house, you don't have to worry," says Eraserhead. "Cool. That's cool," says Izuku. "So, do you want to talk?" asks Eraserhead. "Yeah, but I don't know what I want to talk about," says Izuku. "How about I introduce you to my roommates Present Mick and Midnight?" asks Eraserhead. "That sounds nice," says Izuku. "Hey little listener," says Present Mick. "What's up Present Mick?" asks Izuku. "Not much. Hey, do you want me to put you on speaker so you can talk to all of us?" asks Present Mick. "Sounds good," says Izuku. "Hey kid," says Eraserhead. "How are ya?" asks Midnight. "Hi, and I'm doing alright. I'm excited to talk to you guys, I'm a fan of yours. I get why Nezu wanted you three to teach at UA," says Izuku. "Well, we are pretty great," says Present Mick with a smile visible to all but Izuku. "Speaking of great, I hear you are a pretty good fighter." Eraserhead doesn't give out compliments even to his students. "I bet your mom and dad would be proud if they knew how strong you are," says Midnight. "I think my mom would be a little scared if she knew just how good of a fighter I am. And dad might be proud I wouldn't. No, we haven't talked in 10 years and even then I don't remember him saying anything nice," says Izuku. "I'm sorry for bringing that up. If I had known I wouldn't have," starts Midnight. "It's fine. Mom loves me enough for two," says Izuku. "She sounds like a wonderful person," says Midnight. "She is. She's been there for me for as long as I can remember. I was wondering, is Eraserhead going to drag you into his search to find me and pick me up off of the streets?" asks Izuku. "Yeah, we are going to help him help you," says Present Mick. "That's nice. It's a little bit of a problem for me, but I might be able to get your autograph on something. Maybe I could have a bunch of heroes sign the same shirt," says Izuku. "That sounds like a good idea. I would totally sign your shirt, little listener," says Present Mick. "That's awfully nice of you. What about the rest of you? Would you give me a signature?" asks Izuku. "Yeah," says Eraserhead. "Sure," says Midnight. "Thanks Eraserhead and Midnight," says Izuku. "You don't have to call me by my hero name, you can call me Aizawa," says Aizawa. "Yamada," says Present Mick. "Nimri," says Midnight. "Well, I can't just go and tell all of you my real name. So maybe I should come up with a vigilante name for you to call me. Although I can't seem to come up with one," says Izuku. "How about Katsuiki? You know, the Japanese word for blood. Because you drink blood and it has a cool ring to it," says Present Mick. "That's pretty good. I think I'll stick with that," says Izuku. Suddenly a loud bang sounds off somewhere near Izuku. "What was that? Are you okay?" asks Aizawa. "Yeah, it was just a gunshot. They are kind of common around where I live. That one wasn't too far, I think I should go deal with it," says Izuku. "Bye kid, and please don't get into a fight you can't win," says Aizawa. "Bye Aizawa, and I won't," says Izuku. Unbeknownst to Izuku, he would end up in a fight he can't win much sooner than he expected. But not tonight. He destroys tonight's villains. Around a week from now civilians are being evacuated. Most nearby heroes are working on getting civilians somewhere safe and keeping themselves away from the villain causing all of this chaos. 2 heroes stayed behind. The water hose duo stayed behind to fight the rampaging villain Muscular, but they were losing the fight. Muscular was about to kill Mr. Izumi when a figure jumped out and caught his fist. It was Izuku Midoriya, otherwise known as Katsuiki, and he is in for the fight of his life. Chapter 11. It was a peaceful day for Izuku. He woke up and went through his routine. He worked out with more force than usual. He felt stressed. He couldn't explain why, but he felt like something bad was going to. The day went by without incident. He visited his mom. He visited Hatsumi, who was working on compressed weights for heroes with enhanced strength to work out. He decided he would go on patrol despite his sense of impending doom. Him sitting around wasn't going to help with this feeling. If anything, it'll just make him feel like a sitting duck. It was dark out by the time he went on patrol. The patrol was calming. Moving around by jumping from building to building was hypnotizing in a way. Midoriya was knocked out of his musings when his enhanced hearing picked up on a far-away screaming that turned into a series of screams. With that, he was off leaping from building to building as fast as he could. He began to see smoke rise from the direction of the screams. He was finally on the scene of chaos. That was the only word to describe what was in front of him. Fire was everywhere, walls were crumbling and people were trapped in a burning building. Heroes were evacuating and some of the cowardly heroes simply ran away screaming they would bring more help. Midoriya knew they had no intention of coming back and did their job for them. He got people from under rubble and carried them to heroes who didn't bother to ask him any questions. When enough people were evacuated, he decided to go to where he heard fighting and see if he could help apprehend the villain. When he got there, he saw the water hose duo. One was under a large chunk of concrete and the other was about to get hit, crushed by the villain's powerful hands. The villain was 6'5" blonde and covered in muscle fibers from his ankles to his neck. Midoriya jumps in front of Mr. Izumi and blocked Muscular's fist. He quickly punches Muscular in the chin while he is still shocked about the new arrival. The punch sends Muscular stumbling and Midoriya jumps into the air and kicks Muscular in the chest with both feet and lands roughly on his side, while Muscular gets launched backwards. "Are you okay? Can you walk or fight?" asks Midoriya. "Yeah, let me get my wife out from the rubble over there and we can help you fight," says Mr. Izumi. "Hey, you're that new vigilante, right? What do you call yourself?" asks Muscular. "Katsuiki." "Who are you?" asks Katsuiki. "Name's Muscular. Listen, I'm gonna kill these heroes. It would be nice to kill you, but I want to wait for you to get stronger before you and I really go at it," says Muscular. "I'm strong enough right now," says Katsuiki. "If you're sure, then I'll beat you into a bloody paste," says Muscular. "I doubt it, but you're welcome to try," says Izuku as he bounces his shoulders tauntingly. Muscular swings at Katsuiki, who dodges under it and punches Muscular in the side. Muscular doesn't budge and punches Katsuiki in the stomach and carries him several feet off the ground. Muscular follows up by punching Katsuiki in the chest and sending him skidding across the street. Muscular leaps to Katsuiki and is about to bring his fist down on him when 2 torrents of water hit him in the back and sends him onto the ground. Katsuiki takes this chance to get on his feet and regroup with the water hose duo. "You two keep him off of me when you can hit him and I'll fight up close and try to give the 2 of you opportunities to hit him," says Katsuiki. "We'll follow your lead," says Mr. Izumi. "We're right behind you," says Mrs. Izumi. At this point Muscular had already gotten to his feet and was ready to keep fighting. 3-on-1? That sounds like a little fun, says Muscular. Muscular charges Mr. Izumi but is stopped when Katsuiki jumps between them and swings at Muscular. Muscular steps back to dodge and jabs at Katsuiki, who steps under it and jabs Muscular in the ribs. The two continue to swing at each other. Katsuki uses the knowledge that was transferred to him and Muscular's aggressive fighting style to dodge and counter every hit sent his way. Despite Katsuiki fighting as hard as he can and stepping back to let the water hose duo blast Muscular with powerful torrents of water that send him stumbling back, nothing seems to actually affect Muscular. The wide grin on Muscular's face only makes the trio certain that nothing that they do is getting behind his muscle fibers. "We have an idea that might hurt him, we just need you to hold him off for a little while," shouts Mr. Izumi. "I've got it, but try to be quick," says Katsuiki. "I'm gonna be honest with you. You don't got it," says Muscular. Katsuiki and Muscular begin fighting again, but this time Katsuiki began getting grazed by hits. Despite only grazing him, they hit with so much force that each hit shakes him to the bone. "See, without their help you can't hold off against someone like me for long," says Muscular. Once again the two begin swinging at each other, but Katsuki is covered with bruises and is starting to slow down. With one of Muscular's punches, Katsuiki slowed down too much and gets hit in the stomach and gets flung across the street, only stopping because he hit a building. Muscular grabs Katsuiki and throws him into the middle of the street. Muscular then jumps high into the air and tries to land on Katsuiki and crush him. Katsuiki barely has enough time to lift his arms to make an attempt at catching Muscular, an attempt that doesn't stop the entire attack. The force of the attack tears through the street below them and tears Katsuiki's suit and shirt along with Katsuiki's back, embedding chunks of concrete in his flesh, causing him to groan in pain. "Katsuiki, get down!" shouts the water hose duo. Muscular looks at them as if he forgot they were there, and Katsuiki jumps away while he's distracted. The duo shoots out two beams at the same time. The beams look much denser than any they have used before, and when the beams meet they form one stream coming straight for Muscular. He gets sent flying into and through a building across the street. The trio stared at the hole that Muscular just went through for a couple of seconds before sighing. Katsuiki chuckles solemnly. "We won," says Mr. Izumi. "He won't be hurting anybody anytime soon," says Mrs. Izumi. "I hate to be contradicting," comes an all too familiar voice from inside the building, "but you're dead wrong." Muscular walks out of the building and the trio sees that their attack actually damaged him because his fibers were gone and his chest along with his head was bleeding. "No," Katsuiki says so quietly it was almost a whisper. The fibers on Muscular's body come back bigger and denser than before, and he charges Katsuiki, who barely has time to put his arm in front of his head to block the punch. A loud crack comes from Katsuiki's arm as his radius and ulna snap from the force put on them, and he gets sent flying away. He tries to get up but winces as he puts weight on his broken arm. He watches the water hose duo get pummeled under Muscular's fist. He watches as their blood spills out onto the road beneath them. It's only now that he realizes how hungry he is. Hungry isn't the right word, he's starving, he needs to drink, but he looks the water hose duo in the eyes and knows he can't take theirs. He sees Muscular turn and look at him. "You know you're not put up a pretty good fight. You're real slippery and hard to hit. I had fun, it's a shame you're done," says Muscular. "I'm not done yet," says Katsuiki as his eyes begin to glow as if there's a flame in his eyes. "Oh, you've still got some fight left in you? You really are great," says Muscular. Suddenly Katsuiki jets forward far faster than he had been moving before and brings his fangs down on the side of Muscular's face. He feels his fangs pierce Muscular's eyes and he feels himself tear through Muscular's ear. When Muscular finally manages to throw Katsuiki off of him, he's missing an eye and an ear. While Katsuiki's wounds normally heal when he drinks blood, something else happened. His muscles expanded and his skin rippled, throwing off the rest of his already torn shirt and suit. He charges forwards along with Muscular, whom is currently howling with anger and pain. Muscular expects to overpower Katsuiki, but Katsuiki catches Muscular's fist and punches him in the ribs, and this time Muscular feels it. The two begin trading blows and Muscular starts losing ground and actually losing their fight. It seems Katsuiki has won the fight when his muscles begin to go back to their normal size and he gets beaten thoroughly. Muscular throws Katsuiki to the ground. Katsuiki feels beaten. Like he can hardly move, but with the strength he has left he throws his knife at Muscular. What surprises Katsuiki is that the knife pierces his shoulder. Katsuiki now realizes how to beat Muscular. I can't overpower him, I just need something sharp, thinks Katsuiki. Katsuiki pulls his pistol off of his belt and fires off 6 shots into Muscular's stomach before Muscular slaps his gun away. Alright. You're out of tricks and on your deathbed. I don't hold it against you. Taking my eye and ear, I mean. I wanted to kill and you wanted to protect. You gave it a good run, but I'm gonna have to kill you now, says Muscular. Before Muscular can prove his claims to be true, he receives a hard kick to the ribs. Katsuiki looks to see who did it and sees the rabbit hero Miruko standing proudly. Muscular throws a large piece of concrete at Katsuiki that Miruko kicks into pieces. While Miruko is distracted, Muscular jumps away. Miruko gets ready to jump after him. Wait, says Katsuiki. I'm not helping some vigilante, says Miruko. You don't have to help me, but get them to a hospital, says Katsuiki as he points to the water hose duo. Alright, says Miruko as she picks up the water hose duo and jogs off to get help. Katsuiki gets up and limps over to his pistol and puts it back in its belt. It may be the conclusion or the loss of blood, but he can't seem to remember how to get home. He decides to wander until he finds it. He leaves a trail of blood behind as he tiredly stumbles through the streets of downtown Mustafa looking for home or a familiar face. He stumbles around for what seems like hours. He limps until he can limp no more. He collapses onto the middle of the sidewalk and rolls over to see the stars above. This isn't too bad of a view to die to. Is it Ruby? Thinks Katsuiki. Katsuiki was certain he was going to die as soon as he fell unconscious. Before he lost consciousness, he heard 2 voices. One was light, bubbly, and energetic. The other was deep, emotionless, and tired. Grin said we should look for him around here, says the light voice. Yeah, Grin said that, but I doubt we'll find him, says the deeper voice. Well, if we just keep looking, I'm sure we'll find him, says the light voice. Hey, the guy had green hair, right? Asks the deep voice. Yeah, why? Asks the lighter voice. And he would be wearing blue pants with a black tie and mask, right? Asks the deeper voice. Yeah, why? Asks the lighter voice again. I think that's him, says the deeper voice. Oh, good job, Dobby, calls out the lighter voice. Yeah, whatever, Toga. Let's just take him home and patch him up, says Dobby. Chapter 13. Dobby grabbed Midoriya's limp body by the legs and Toga grabbed him by the shoulders as they carried him back to their base. His arms dangled limply but seemed to tense up whenever Toga leaned down and licked the blood off of his face. When the trio went under a streetlight right outside the abandoned building Toga and Dobby lived in, they finally saw the state he was left in. His left arm was bending the wrong way. His head was bleeding profusely. He had one of his ribs slightly protruding from his chest. He left a trail of blood back to their base as it dripped from his back, which was torn to shreds. His left shoe had a nail running through it that he stepped on in his concussion-induced march through the city. His pants were soaked in blood and torn by his ankles, revealing a gash in his right leg. His mask and tie were starting to look crimson as they loosely hung onto his body. His torso was bruised in different shades of purple, blue, and green. His arms had a series of bruises and cuts going up and down. His knuckles were split open and bleeding. His eye bags were so deep from his lack of sleep that they were darker than some of his bruises. In every sense of the word, he looked dead. Jesus fucking Christ. We need to fix this guy up, says Dobby. Can I clean his cuts? Asks Toga excitedly. You want his blood, don't you? Asks Dobby as they make their way inside. Yup, says Toga happily. Their home is poorly lit with candles that burn with a blue flame. It is dusty and there isn't much for furniture. Just a beat-up couch, table with only one chair and 3 other doors. One door had a large T cut into it, the other had a B and the last door had a D. Dobby and Toga set Midoriya on the table and Toga runs into the B room and comes back with a first aid kit. Toga gets to cleaning all of the gashes on Midoriya's back as soon as Dabi pulls out the pieces of concrete with tweezers. It takes a while, but all of Midoriya's wounds are empty and disinfected. Toga happily looks at her bloody cloth while Dabi works on stitching Midoriya's back. Once Dabi finishes that, they flip him onto his back and work on the cuts and bruises along his arms and legs. They have Toga clean them before Dabi stitches them shut. "Toga, call Grin and tell him we found his guy," says Dabi. "Yep," says Toga cheerfully. Toga calls Grin and puts him on speaker before setting her phone down and getting back to work. "Hey, did you find him?" asks Grin. "Get over here," says Dabi, and the line goes dead. Once they get rid of all of the wounds on his arm, Dabi bandages Midoriya's head wound and hopes he doesn't. "What's next?" asks Toga. "I don't know," says Dabi. "What do you mean?" asks Toga. "I don't know how to fix bruises or set broken bones, especially not bones that are sticking out of the body," says Dabi, seemingly uninterested in what he's doing. A knock on the door snaps the two out of their conversation. Dabi walks over to the door and peers out of the peephole in the door and sees Grin pacing worriedly. Dabi opens the door and says, "Hey, where is he? Is he okay?" asks Grin as he pushes his way past Dabi and into the house. "Hey Grin," says Toga. Grin ignores her and rushes to Izuku's side. "Shit kid," Grin mutters before speaking at a normal volume, although it was done frantically. "Do either of you know how to set broken ribs?" "No," says Dabi. "Sorry boss," says Toga. "Damn it," whispers Grin. Grin reaches over to check Midoriya's pulse. He waits for a while with his hand on Midoriya's wrist and feels nothing. He sighs deeply and painfully. "Shit kid. I wanted you to be a vigilante because you were a good person who deserved better than what they had. I never meant for this to happen to you or your mother. I'm so sorry," whispers Grin. Toga gently wraps her arms around Grin in an attempt to comfort him. Dabi puts his hand reassuringly on Grin's shoulder. Neither of them had seen the man express emotion. It was hard to believe that he could. They both wondered what made this vigilante so special that it actually hurt Grin to lose him. "It's going to be okay," whispers Toga. "Yeah." He never said it, but I think this is what the kid wanted deep down. He was such a wonderful person. He was easily the purest person I've ever met. If life had been kinder to him, he would have made the world around him a brighter place. His smiles lit up a room even though they were fake. His smile actually made me feel something. If they were real smiles, I doubt even I'd be able to say no to him," says Grin. Once again Toga and Dabi found themselves shocked at the way Grin was talking about this guy. They wished they could meet him. The sound of a phone ringing cut through the air like a bullet. Grin found that the source of the ringing phone was Midoriya's pocket. Grin looked at the phone and noticed two things. One is that the phone was cracked, and the other is someone named Andy was calling. "What should I do?" asks Grin. "Answer it," says Toga. "I can't answer it," says Grin. "Of course you can," says Toga as she reaches up and answers the call. "Hello," calls out a feminine voice. "Hi," says Grin uncertainly. "This isn't who I thought it was," says the voice. "Oh well. I guess you have the wrong number," says Grin. "Are you Grin?" asks the voice. "I am," says Grin. "Well, I know Izuku is a vigilante and that you are his informant," says the voice. "Who are you?" asks Grin. "I'm Ruby. Now tell me where Izuku is. I saw everything on the news. How hurt is he?" asks Ruby. "He doesn't have a pulse," says Grin. "Yeah, he never has a pulse," says Ruby. "Wait, so is he still alive?" asks Grin a little too loudly. "I'll check soon to make sure." "Where are you?" Grin tells her the address and she makes her way over. "So is he alive?" asks Dabi. "He might be. Someone he knows is coming over to find out. He doesn't have a pulse no matter what he's doing. He might just be unconscious," says Grin. "From what I know, he's tough. I'm sure he'll make it," says Dabi. "Yeah," Does she know how to set ribs? Asks Dabi. I don't know, I've never met her before, replies Grin. Oh, says Dabi. Are you sure it's okay to bring her here? Asks Toga. Not really, but she was saved in his contacts, so she probably will be, says Grin. A knock on the door alerts them to the elder vampire's presence. Grin looks through the peephole and sees a tall, black-haired woman in her 20s. He opens the door and greets her. Where is he? Asks Ruby. Over here, says Grin as he guides her to the table. You did a pretty good job with the stitching, says Ruby. Thanks, says Dabi. Ruby looks back at him in surprise as she hadn't noticed him or Toga. Is he okay? Asks Grin. Ruby puts her hand over his head. Her hand seems to vibrate and her eyes dilate. She suddenly aggressively pulls her hand away from him. What did you do? Asks Grin. I looked for any brain activity, says Ruby. And is he okay? Asks Grin. Ruby sighs deeply before saying, I'm sorry, but he's dead. No, says Grin in shock. He won't stay dead, Ruby reassures. Grin looks at her for a moment before leaning in and whispering, Did you turn him into a vampire? Yeah, says Ruby. So how do we bring him back? Asks Dabi. He needs my blood to be willfully given to him, says Ruby as she cuts her wrist with her claws and lets her blood roll off of her fingers into his open mouth. What now? Asks Grin. We wait for him to wake up. His wounds will heal and push the stitches out of his body. He'll still feel the pain from dying, so we should treat him gently but without pity. He's going to be cold. Freezing actually. Do you have any spare clothes to cover his upper body? Says Ruby. Nothing that would fit him, says Toga. I have an old jacket, but that's it. We aren't what you'd call rich, says Dabi. Knowing him, he'll more than make up for it, says Ruby. I'll be right back, says Dabi. I've never seen him wear anything else, says Toga. So, how did you find him? Asks Ruby. Grin's directions, says Toga. Okay, how did you find him? She asks Grin. I put a tracker in his shoe and I think he stepped on a nail or something and broke it, but I knew about where he was, says Grin. Yeah, we pulled a nail out of his foot, says Toga. Here you go, says Dabi as he walks back in with a small jean jacket. That's not gonna fit him, you dingus, says Toga. It's the only other article of clothing I own, says Dabi. It'll be fine, says Ruby as Dabi puts the jacket on Midoriya. Is he gonna wake up soon? Asks Toga. Midoriya jumps off the table screaming the word, fucker, while sharpening his claws and extending his fangs. He looks around for a couple of seconds and sees Dabi and Toga in front of him and misses Ruby and Grin behind him. Who the hell are you? Katsuiki, calls out Ruby. Midoriya turns and sees Ruby and Grin standing in front of him. Am I safe here? Asks Midoriya. Yeah, replies Ruby. Oh good. Also, why am I in unbearable pain? Asks Midoriya calmly despite feeling like he's dying. That's a side effect of what happened to you, says Ruby. And what did happen to me? Asks Midoriya. You were fighting the villains Muscular, starts Ruby. After that I heard two voices, then I blacked out, says Midoriya. Those may have been our voices, says Toga. Okay, you were the light voice, says Midoriya. Am I the deep voice? Asks Dabi. Yeah, you are, says Midoriya. Okay, so I blacked out. Then what happened? You died again, says Ruby. Everyone in the room pauses to process this information except Midoriya. Alright, well, I'm tired and dead both inside and out, so I'm going home, says Midoriya. Well, there are still a lot of things I need to tell you, says Ruby. Can we wait until we get to my house? Asks Midoriya. Yeah, but what are you in such a rush for? Asks Ruby. I left my cigarettes and my old suit, also I want whiskey and cat videos, says Midoriya. That sounds fun, can I come? Asks Toga. I guess, says Midoriya. Dabi, are you coming too? Asks Toga. Hey, you both look really Skinny. When was the last time you ate? Asks Midoriya. It's been a while. Says Dabi. You're both coming to my house getting food and getting out of this freezing abandoned building and warming up. It's the least I can do cause you saved my life and all that. Says Midoriya. Sounds good to me. Says Dabi, who finally shows a little excitement. Hooray. Says Toga. The four of them went back to Midoriya's house and Midoriya played cat videos on his laptop that he set up to his TV. He was in the kitchen cooking some of the meals his mom taught him how to make. He was gonna make a buffet for them. Hey kid. Says Ruby. Hey. Replies Midoriya. So we have to talk. Says Ruby. Do we? Asks Midoriya. We could just drink, smoke, and watch cat videos. Yeah, as great as that sounds, we do need to talk. Says Ruby. Alright, but I'm gonna repress my emotions and use vigilantism to vent my frustration, and I hope you know that. Says Midoriya. I expected it. Says Ruby. Good. Says Midoriya. So what do we need to talk about? We need to talk about the effect dying has on your soul. Says Ruby. And what effect is that? Asks Midoriya. It chips away at your soul. You'll start to lose your emotions, then you'll lose your morals. I'm not saying that you have no room for error, but try to be more careful and stick to villains you know you can beat. You remind me of the vampire that made me a vampire. His name was Vlad Deeps. He was a great fighter and stubborn. He was willing to die if he could save a life, and he didn't seem to care whether he lived or died. Says Ruby. Yeah, I see why I remind you of him. Says Izuku. One day he bit off more than he could chew. I don't think dying scared him. But losing him scared me. I don't want to lose you too. Says Ruby. I'll do what I can to come home. Well, I was gonna say breathing, but I don't do that, so I'll just say living. Says Midoriya. That's all I want. Says Ruby. Vlad gave me a gift the second time I died. He said it was like a coming-of-age event for a vampire. I'll pass it down to you soon. The two quickly finished conversing and brought food out to Dabi and Toga before getting plastered. Midoriya didn't know at the time, but Dabi and Toga were basically moving into his house, and he wouldn't get rid of them for all of the peace and quiet in the world. Chapter 14. Dabi, Toga, Ruby and Midoriya, who was still going by Ketsuki because he doesn't know if he could completely trust Dabi and Toga, were watching cat videos on Midoriya's TV. Toga was leaning into Midoriya, but he didn't notice due to the fact he was busy disassociating. He was thinking about his fight with Muscular. Try as he might to distract himself with cat videos and alcohol, he couldn't seem to take his mind off of the fight. The image of Muscular standing over him. The smell of the smoke in the air mixed with the scent of blood that he normally enjoys. The taste of Muscular's blood, eye, and ear as they traveled through his mouth and down his throat. Most of all, he remembered the pain, his ribs snapping and his back getting torn to shreds while he gets pummeled into the ground. The hits to the head, the concussion. It terrified. It still terrifies him. The thought of fighting Muscular a second time. If he had to breathe, his breath would be rapid and painful, but just like always his chest didn't move and all of his pain turns to emptiness once again. Midoriya was roughly snapped out of his musings by the sound of his phone ringing. I'll be right back. Says Midoriya before stepping into the kitchen where he left his phone. See you, Ketsu. Calls out Toga. Midoriya smiles at his new nickname but doesn't respond otherwise. He gets into the kitchen and checks his phone. Aizawa is calling. Oh shit. Says Midoriya before answering and heading up to his room. Hey. Says Midoriya. Hey kid, are you okay? What happened? Why did you think you could do that? You should have left it to the pros. Oh my god, are you okay? Kid says something. Says Aizawa in one breath. Hey, calm down. Breathe. Are you good? Asks Midoriya. I'm fine. What the hell happened to you? Asks Aizawa. Says Midoriya. What happened? Asks Aizawa. Well, on the bright side, I can keep coming back from the dead. Says Midoriya. Oh my fucking god. Says Aizawa. Yeah, it's crazy. I'm immortalish. Says Midoriya. I don't even know what that means. Says Aizawa. Neither do I. Not really anyway. Replies Izuku. Well, when you learn, try to explain it to me. Says Aizawa. I will, but I just found out today. Or last night, I don't know how long I've been out. Says Izuku. Well, are you okay? Asks Aizawa. Oh yeah, I'm fine. But that's enough about me. How are you doing? Ya got any cool hero stories? Asks Izuku. Kid, I'm trying to have a serious conversation here. Says Aizawa. So am I, and I'm failing, and I'm sorry for that. Says Izuku. Well, can you just try a little harder? I know I don't look the part, but I care about your well-being. Says Aizawa. Well, that's something I haven't really experienced before. And as for trying harder, it would be a lot easier if I wasn't on my third, maybe fourth bottle of whiskey. Says Izuku. You're an alcoholic. Not only do I have to worry about you being a crime-fighting teenager, not only do I have to worry about whatever issues you have or had with your father, I have to worry about you being a 14-year-old alcoholic. Says Aizawa. Yeah, but you should probably be more worried about the excessive amount of cigarettes I smoke than me being an alcoholic. And I don't think I'm an alcoholic yet. I mean, it's not like I'm addicted. Says Izuku. I'm gonna address the cigarettes later. When you said I don't think I'm an alcoholic, you said yet at the end. Says Aizawa. Shit, did I? Asks Izuku. Yeah. You did. Says Aizawa. Oh. That's not good. Right, that's not good, is it? Asks Izuku. Well, it's good you told me, but I'm far more upset than I was when I called you, and I didn't think that was possible. Says Aizawa. Well, that has to be stressful for you. Says Izuku. Oh, it is. Says Aizawa. Damn, that's rough. Says Izuku. Yeah, I noticed. Says Aizawa. If it makes you feel better, I'm probably gonna take some time off the whole vigilante thing. I'll wait until my joints don't feel sore or stiff. I'll probably work out while I'm on my little vacation. So, when I do come back, I'll be stronger and faster. Although I might seek out Muscular and go for a rematch. Says Izuku. Okay. I'm glad you're taking a break, but please, for the love of everything on this cursed rock, don't go after Muscular. Says Aizawa. Yeah, you're probably right. I shouldn't look for him. I think the pain coursing through my body is enough of a reminder that I'll stick with small fries for now. Says Izuku. You said, for now. Says Aizawa. I'm digging my own grave here, aren't I? Asks Izuku. Yeah, you are. Says Aizawa. Well, I guess I just have to make sure you don't catch me. Says Izuku. You can't stay away from me. Says Aizawa. Then I guess I have to find Muscular before you find me. Says Izuku. You might be able to slip away from me every once in a while. Says Aizawa. That's a relief. I'd probably have to get myself killed if I couldn't. Says Izuku. How do you joke around when all this stuff happens in your life? Asks Aizawa. All my jokes are cries for help. Says Izuku. Can't your jokes be jokes and your cries for help be cries for help? Asks Aizawa. Nope. But my cries for help can be jokes. Says Izuku. That's what you said earlier, but in reverse. Says Aizawa. Damn, I really am drunk, huh? Asks Izuku. Yeah, are we ever gonna have a serious conversation about this? You know, when you aren't plastered. Says Aizawa. Plastered is a strong word. Says Izuku. And whiskey is a strong drink. Says Aizawa. That's fair. Says Izuku. Listen, just call me when you're sober. Says Aizawa. Hey Dad, I'm home. Calls a voice from behind Aizawa. Whoa, you have a kid? Asks Izuku. Yeah, but you can't talk to him drunk. Says Aizawa. What if I was sober? Asks Izuku. Then I might let you speak to him. Says Aizawa. I'm gonna put my regeneration on high for a little while and make myself sober. Says Izuku. You can do that? Says Aizawa questioningly. There is a pause in the conversation. Yeah, I can, and I'm sober now, and that sucks. Says Izuku. Yeah, but now I'll let you talk to my son. Says Aizawa. Well, that doesn't suck. Says Izuku. Shinsu, can you come here a minute? Calls Aizawa. Sure. Calls a voice that Izuku categorizes as Shinsu. Izuku hears some rustling and footsteps. What's up? Asks Shinsu. I have someone who wants to meet you. Says Aizawa. Am I on speaker? Says Izuku. Yeah. Says Aizawa. What's up, Aizawa? Says Izuku. I thought you said you weren't drunk. Says Aizawa. I'm not. Says Izuku. I'm sorry to interrupt, but who is this? Asks Shinsu. I'm the Vigilante Katsuiki. I met your dad a little while ago while fighting villains. We've been friends ever since. Says Izuku. We aren't friends. You need help and I'm a hero. Says Izuku. Wow, you get killed by one supervillain and suddenly you have the attention of a couple of heroes. What is this world turning into? Says Izuku. Stop being stupid. Says Aizawa. Kids love stupid. Says Izuku. He's your age. Says Aizawa. Shinsu just continues to stand there feeling the full weight of this incredibly awkward conversation. Well, that explains why his voice is so deep. I just sort of imagined that he was like an 8-year-old with a teenager's voice. Says Izuku. Why did you think that? Asks Shinsu. I'm not very bright. Also, I got repeatedly hit in the head by a villain that can throw cars. Says Izuku. That explains a lot. Says Aizawa. So what did you want from me? Asks Shinsu. I didn't really have anything in mind, I just heard you come through the door and wanted to meet you because I think your dad is cool. Says Izuku. You got a weird way of showing it. Says Aizawa. I like you and all, but frick the authority. Says Izuku. I kind of imagine a vigilante would be fine with saying fuck. Says Shinsu. I am, but I like to spice things up when I can. Says Izuku. I can respect that. Says Shinsu. I can tell from just a couple sentences that you're a solid guy. Says Izuku. Thanks. Says Shinsu. So are you single? Asks Izuku. Wait, what? Asks Shinsu, whom currently sounds completely baffled. Stay away from my son, you demon. Says Aizawa. I wouldn't call myself a demon. I'm like a half demon. A mini demon. Demon Junior, but not a whole demon. And besides, I was just kidding, I hardly know the guy. Says Izuku. You are a confusing person to talk to. Says Aizawa. I'm gonna be honest, I'm using this conversation to act like a dumbass so that I can distract myself from the constant mental pain of sobriety. Says Izuku. Dad, your friends are cool. Says Shinsu. Hell yeah, Shinsu. Tell the man. Says Izuku. But this guy is just weird. Says Shinsu. That is not what I wanted you to tell him, but I respect your honesty. Says Izuku. He is funny though in a weird way. Says Shinsu. I'll take what I can get. Says Izuku. Okay, you guys are getting way too close for me to feel comfortable. I think you are going to get my son killed one of these days. And I really don't want to worry about both of you. Says Aizawa. You are going to have to worry about us because I am gonna become your son's best friend. Says Izuku. Yeah, whatever, just don't get him in any trouble. I'll give him your number in case he wants to keep talking with you. Says Aizawa. That's really cool of you. Says Izuku. Yeah, okay, my roommates are coming home, I'll call back later. Says Aizawa. Yeah. I'm not ready for present mix enthusiasm. You and Shinsu have that perfect level of dead inside with a will to live to be perfect to talk to. Says Izuku. Well, we try. Says Aizawa. That's good to hear. Says Izuku. Well, I gotta go now, bye. Says Aizawa hurriedly before hanging up. Izuku started going back downstairs when he heard muttering. He activated super hearing so that he could understand what they were saying. Ketsu is so cute, says Toga. You think so? Says Ruby. Yup. I really like how he looked when he was all covered in blood. I don't think all of it was his, but that just makes him cuter, says Izuku. You think you could get him to take you on a date? Asks Ruby. I want him to take me out, says Toga. You go for it. I can put in a good word for you, says Ruby excitedly. Really? That's so nice of you. Dabi, did you hear? Asks Toga. Dabi grunts in confirmation as he sips from his whiskey. I wanna cover both of us in blood, says Toga. Ruby assumed it was a metaphor and was happy with herself for potentially getting her self-proclaimed nephew a date. While this was happening, a series of red flags were showing up in Izuku's head. Luckily for Toga, the color red was really growing on Izuku. That's not a metaphor. She really wants to cover him in blood, says Dabi. You want to kill him? Asks Ruby nervously. No, he's way too cute for me to kill, says Toga. So you don't want him dead? Asks Ruby because she needs clarification. No, I just want to date him and also suck his blood, says Toga. Izuku decided now was a good time to show himself to the trio. Luckily for you, I'm down for both of those things, says Izuku as he walks into the living room.